So you got your brute, and now it's time to assemble it. Well, today I'm going to overview everything you need to know. So I have unpacked the small box that came with your bike, came as a secondary shipment. And besides the charger, which should be in there too, you're going to have your front wheel, you're going to have a shock, you're going to have a front fender, your pedals, your headlight, and your battery. And so now we're going to go piece by piece, and I'm going to show you how to install all these things. So obviously one cool thing about the brute is the way it's weighted with that center stand. It's just pitching back as it is, and you don't need to do anything crazy to get this front wheel on. So you're going to put your axle bolt in, you're going to guide the disc so that it goes between those two brake pads. Really, really important. If you don't do that, you're going to have a nightmare of a time. Then you're going to lift your front wheel, push your axle through, and add your nut. Now we're tightening this up. Now we're dropping tools. Make sure you tighten these up pretty good. You don't want to go too crazy, but make sure they are good to go. One quick thing, if you take a look on this side, you're going to see how the caliper is mounted, right? We all know this, and there are these two little threaded sections right up front here. Make sure that when you put that wheel on, that the two threaded posts on this side are also facing out. If these are facing backwards, and you got two opposites here, it's going to make that wheel turn to the right, and every time you brake, you're going to feel this crazy dip. So keep an eye out and make sure these guys facing forward. So once you got your handlebars kind of organized here, drop them right down in the middle between those two slots, stick your two clamps, and you can begin tightening things up. So just make sure you tighten those handlebars down really good. There are 4 of those screws, right? If you don't tighten those down enough and you go to brake, your whole handlebars are just gonna rock forward. Also, now that we got this installed, if you are a taller person and you got the bike without the risers, just know we sell the risers separately, and it's really just a spacer. It's like a fancy piece of aluminum that's machined for us, and it just goes in between this main bracket and the fork, and it just lifts it off. So if you find that these handlebars are a little too close, just let us know. You can also go on Amazon and find handlebar risers for motorcycle. So now that we have the handlebars installed, one thing I wanted to know is just on the brakes, right? So everybody likes their brakes a little bit differently. My goal when I'm riding is to try to keep my hand fairly parallel, maybe a little angled downward, but if you're angled really downward or angled up, you're going to put a lot of strain on your wrist. So try to make sure that's a good position. Also, if you need to add brake fluid to your braking system, use DOT4 brake fluid on here. Do not use mineral oil. It is not a compatible thing with the system. Use actual motorcycle brake fluid. And another thing, if you're going to remove this cap on top, do not use a Phillips head screwdriver. Do not do it. Do not do it. Do not do it. It's going to ruin the whole thing. You need something called a JIS screwdriver. They look very, very similar to Phillips heads, but they are not the same. This took us a little while to learn, but use the right one. You're going to ruin your bike if you don't. So depending on your shipment, your bike may have the screen on it and it may not. But what you'll notice is the screen has a green plug and a red plug. And so on the bike itself is also a green plug and a red plug. And so you're just going to want to make sure you plug each one of those in. If you don't do that, it will not turn on. The red wire is the ignition and the green wire is the whole screen. So you're going to get the battery voltage and the speed signal and all that stuff are coming right through there. So the next thing we're going to install is a shock. And the way this is going to work is you are going to put it onto that bolt and then slide it over. Put that bolt through, and the other side of the yoke is actually threaded, so there's not going to be a nut there. And that's pretty much it. The last thing you're going to do is tighten this nut up. Don't forget, on the other side is a Allen. There's actually a bolt that goes through this whole frame. So you're going to have to hold on by putting an Allen wrench in there and then using your wrench on this side to tighten this down. Make sure that you tighten it down all the way so that the little thread locking thing activates. Sometimes you're going to see a couple of little different knobby type of things on these shocks. They don't really do anything. Don't try to adjust them that way. If you do need to make those shocks stiffer, then there is a little threaded piece right here. You can see these little things, and you're just going to turn this And that nut on top is going to compress that shock and stiffen it up. And that's going to be, ideal if you are maybe a heavier rider and it's compressing it too much. We've had reports of people where the tire was like hitting the back on big bumps. If that's happening to you, you can do that. If you're wondering why we have you put on one shock, because I know it is weird, it's because of weight. So UPS maxes this out at 150 pounds, and it turned out that if we took a shock off, it removed about 8 pounds, and that allowed us to use UPS. All right, so this is the front fender. It's a little bit tricky to put on, but a little patience, you'll be fine. So we have a screw that's going to go through this plastic plate. Behind that plastic plate is going to be this spacer. Very important, do not forget the spacer. And that spacer is going to go in front of this hole that you see right here on the fender. And it's going to sandwich this against the fork. So it's a lot of words, but this is how it's going to go. Let's see if we can get a video of this. So that goes right there. Can you see that? Maybe?
Yep.
All right, that goes like that. And you can see the screw sticking through a little bit, right? And then there is a threaded hole on the fork. And you're just going to want to tighten this down. If you find that you are tightening this thing down and it's still easy to move around, you might want to get an extra washer or something like that and put it in between, but you shouldn't have to do that. Okay, so now we're going to make sure that our turn signals are plugged in. They use these tiny little red connectors, and just make sure that they're plugged into the correct one. You're going to know that it's not in the correct one if you turn your turn signals on and left is going right and right is going left. They're not unique plugs, but that's for a reason. The main reason for that is it's really easy to replace, so that if you ever break your turn signal, you can just let us know and we'll send you out a brand new one. So these headlights are a little bit tricky to install, but once you get it located in between these two clamps, you're gonna just put in each bolt. You can use an adjustable wrench. Doesn't have to be anything crazy, but there should be a little rubber washer in between the light and that bracket, and that's going to help make sure that that headlight stays. So just don't forget that little rubber bumper and you'll be good to go. So once you have the headlight mounted, you're going to get the connector. It's a 4-pin with a little threaded collet on the side here, and you're going to fish on the back side of this panel here, and you're going to find a 4-pin connector. It's going to be kind of difficult to get to, but it's there in a difficult place for a reason. So then you're going to put this connector in, and you're going to thread that collet on. You're probably going to have to come on this side and do it, but just make sure that is really tight on there. There's a little O-ring seal, and that's what's going to make sure it's waterproof. So this is the Brutes battery. There's a handle on top and a QS8 connector right there. There's also your charging port. You can charge the battery when it is on the bike, but it's usually best to bring the battery inside, keep it in a dark, dry, cool place, and maintain it there. Don't leave it out in your shed in 95-degree heat or in the freezing cold, because neither one of those things are good for battery. Anyway, so you take it, you drop it through the frame, and you're going to see there are rubber bumpers on the bottom, and you want to make sure the battery is resting within those rubber bumpers just to keep it centered. So you've put your battery in and you've connected the QS8 connector, you've shut your seat. Now if you press that button on the side, all the lights will turn on. Now you'll notice that the lights do not turn off when you use the switches here. And this is a safety feature. By law, we have to have lights running all the time for a motor vehicle. Also, this is like a little addition to the engineering design because a lot of people were leaving the bike on constantly, and that was draining the battery during the wintertime. So we made a decision to hardwire in the lights so that all you got to do is turn off that button and you can store it properly. So once you turn the battery on, you can then turn your key. You're going to hear a beep. That's the far driver kicking on. And you're going to see welcome. The entire thing is going to take maybe 20-30 seconds to boot up. Wait for it to boot up. Don't right away immediately. And you're going to see a couple things going on this screen. In the bottom right corner, you're going to see the voltage of the battery. Now, this is really the best way to check how much range you have. Don't rely on the percentage of the battery left or that little battery icon or a trip meter or anything like that. check that battery meter and make sure at a full charge you're getting about 83.7 to 84 volts, and on a low charge you're looking at about 63 to 64 volts. As you go down in charge, you're going to notice that the speed is going to dip, so just be prepared for that. You're not going to get your full 50 miles an hour when you're down to 10% battery. On the side here is this button, and this button is what changes the speed modes. In speed mode 1, that's going to be a class 3 e-bike, so it's going to peak out at about 28 miles an hour. In mode 2, that's your moped mode, so that's 35 miles an hour. And then in mode 3, that's going to be your full private property mode, right? So that's going to hit about 50 miles an hour. It's also going to have the most torque on mode 3 and the least torque on mode 1. On your left hand here, you have your turn signals, you have a high beam that you can activate, and you have a horn. So now that we have everything installed, let's take a quick look at the bike and make sure everything is tightened up. So first off are these two motor nuts. There is a main one right up against the frame and a locking nut. And so just make sure you get a big wrench, tighten the one closest to the frame first, and tighten the one on the outside. That outside one is going to lock it and help prevent it from getting loose from vibration. This isn't an ideal tool for you, but I'm just trying to use something that most people would have. And the next thing you're going to do is you're going to see that there are two bolts holding on this brake caliper. So you're going to want to, this is hardly going to work here, get the right tools. You got to tighten those guys. They will get kind of loose within those first few rides. There's a whole break-in period, guys. Just make sure those are tightened up. If those don't stay tight, they will shear off, all right? There's a cap on the bike, and that cap is covering another nut. There is an axle that goes through and holds that swing arm on. If you ride this bike really aggressively, you're in the woods, just constantly causing vibration through this whole thing, you might get some swing arm movement. It might start to get a little bit loose. And so what you're gonna wanna do is get a wrench, hold on to this side, put a wrench on the other side, and then tighten that guy down. Just make sure that's good to go. If you're still getting it loose, let us know. You might have a bearing issue, but it's unlikely. We use really, really high quality needle bearings or motorcycle grade. So that swing arm shouldn't go anywhere. It's one of our pride and joys of this whole design, actually, because as far as I know, there's not another e-bike company that uses anything but ball bearing. All right, let's talk about tightening up the fork. So if you go out on your bike and you hit the front brake and you notice that your front fork is getting loose and it's acting really weird, it's probably because this nut is getting loose. But you don't want to go ahead and just tighten that guy. What you got to do first is loosen these two screws on the side. So there's one here and one there. And once you loosen those, it will allow this entire piece called a crown to move. So loosen that guy, tighten that down, and it should be good to go. If that still doesn't do it, you're going to see another piece. Do you see this little collar on here? That collar could possibly have gotten loose. And what you'll need to do is loosen this whole thing up again, tighten that collar down, tighten everything back up, and you should be good to go. And if that is still not doing it, what you might need to do is take a look at these screws. There's a screw on either side of the bottom portion of the crown, and those might be getting loose. So that's the whole build, guys. Now we're going to take it out on the road and do a couple more checks. All right, so I'm actually going to take the camera now, and I'm going to do a little POV video riding this thing and giving you some things to watch out for. And yeah, let's see what we do. Thanks, Alicia. So, as I mentioned before, you got your 3 different speed modes, and so we can quickly switch between whatever we want. I'm going to put it into mode 3, and we're going to get going. So I'm feeling pretty good on this bike just right off the bat. Not every bike is going to feel perfect right off the bat, just because, you know, we get things shipping, especially UPS, they get a little jostled around. So I'm going to show you a few things to keep an eye out for. First off are these brakes. Now my brakes are feeling really good, but you might get a little brake sound. Let's see. Nope, I'm feeling good. My brakes are feeling good. If you're getting a little bit of a squeaking sound or grinding sound, usually it's nothing to worry about. Usually you just gotta ride that bike for, 20, 30 miles or so, let those brake pads set in, and you'll be good to go. It's a brand new bike, just keep that in mind. And those brake pads have to go through something called a bedding process, all right? If you are getting some squeaking going on, it could be maybe some brake fluid got onto your brake disc and now it's in the pad, which is never fun. It could be some salt on those pads. It could be a whole bunch of different things. So if it is either one of those things, what you might want to do is take some rubbing alcohol and take it to that disc and clean that disc up. You might also want to take off your brake caliper and check out your brake discs and make sure that they're not full of oil or something like that. If they are, just keep in mind you can go to Amazon or something like that and get some brake pads. You're going to look up pit bike brake pads and they are probably going to be $5. They're going to be super cheap. All right. If it's just kind of squeaky and it's something that just annoys you right off the bat, if you go to Amazon and you look up something called brake quiet, you put a little brake quiet dot on that thing and that squeak is going to be gone. It's also helpful too because it will help clean the system up. Now I'm throttling it just like that. And I like the way this bike feels. If I wanted to lessen that torque a little bit, if you open up your Far Driver app, which you can download from the App Store, you're going to go over to something called a throttle step. And usually we send them out at 224. Take that throttle step down to about 150 to maybe 180, and it'll give you less of a jumpy torque curve. However, don't adjust those phase amps and things like that, guys. We really spend a lot of time working those numbers out, so try to keep those true. If you adjust those, you're doing them at your own risk, and you could be burning out that motor. All right, one sound I am hearing is a little bit of fender bumping. So that means I probably didn't tighten my fender all the way down. And so I'm going to go back inside eventually here and tighten that guy down. Sometimes that happens. And if you brake hard enough, your front fender will rev. Another thing I'm looking out for right now is how true are my tires. So maybe during shipping this thing was thrown around like crazy and those tires are no longer setting there nice. And so what you're going to want to do if you're getting a lot of bumping up and down is deflate your tire all the way. Add a little soap around the bead of that tire, pressurize it up about 10 psi past what the tire rating is. Let that thing set for about 2 or 3 minutes and then deflate it. And that should help reset that tire bead. Just don't forget to deflate it. Little quick tip for you. As you guys know, we've got that center stand. Now, sometimes it's tricky to figure out where do you hold on to. A lot of people will grab it by that handle. That handle really isn't there for putting it on the center stand. It's more so for loading it into like a car or something. What you want to do is grab the frame right here, put your foot on the back of that center stand, and pull up just straight like that. That's going to give you your best leverage. One more thing to be aware of, when you open up that seat, if you hit that button, that plate right there is where the whole controller is. And behind the whole back rack here, you're going to see 2 screws. They're kind of hidden right now. And they are located right there and right there. And if you undo those screws, this whole plate right here will just pop straight off. Also, if you have difficulty closing your seat, make sure that button is pressed up when it is in this open stage. And then make sure that this guy is fully set out so that it's engaging with that properly. And then lock that nut down. You can also check these 2 posts. Sometimes they're set a little bit high, and that's going to prevent it from fully seating down. So that should be it. Guys, I hope you had fun with that build and it wasn't too much of a difficult task. We really spent some time trying to make this thing so that it would assemble easily, but also teach you some stuff along the way. Really try to make sure you follow those guidelines that I told you about, checking all the nuts and all the bolts and making sure everything is super tight. Make sure you use the correct brake fluid. Most importantly, wear a helmet when you ride, guys. This thing is really fast, and I hate to hear about people getting in crashes. Just wear a helmet. All right, thanks, guys. If you have any more questions, you can send an email, info@sparkcycleworks.com, and we will do our best to help you. But that's it for me. Safe riding.